Shalom, Professor Eugene Kontorovich. How are you?
Well, thank you. Good to be here.
One of the world's leading experts in international law and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. You write for the Wall Street Journal. You had op-eds and articles in the New York Times, LA Times, Politico, and I saw in YouTube that you were interviewed a lot in CNN, BBC, Fox, and more. As an expert for international law, I want to play hard. I will be the bad guy and you will be you. Israel is a racist country. How do I know? Israel has the basic law, the national law, and this is a fact that proves that Israel is a racist country. What do you think about that?
So the question about the basic law, nation state, is very interesting because the argument goes that Israel has done something truly extraordinary against international law, discriminatory, by having a law that says that Israel is the nation state of the Jewish people, by having a law that embodies majoritarian collective identity provisions. And what's amazing is that some of the strongest critics of Israel in this regard themselves have similar measures. So, for example, Israel was heavily criticized by the European Union for this basic law. Yet numerous European Union member states, we're not talking about Arab dictatorships, numerous European Union member states have provisions declaring themselves to be the nation state of the Latvian people, the Slovak people, and so forth. Such provisions are quite common. The law was criticized for being discriminatory by establishing Hebrew as the primary official language. But almost every country in the world that has linguistic minorities only has one official national language. It's very unusual to have more than one. This is completely normal. Indeed, in Spain, which has numerous linguistic minorities, not only is Spanish Castilian, the Castilian dialect, the official language. Everyone is obligated to know it, unlike Hebrew in the Constitution. And indeed, the status quo of Arabic is maintained. Many countries have provisions establishing official Catholic religion, Eastern Orthodox religion, various Protestant denominations. Israel is the world's only country with a Jewish majority, but nonetheless, the law does not even do that. Now, then, let's compare it to the Constitution, now not of Western democracies, but of the Palestinian Authority. Palestinian Authority says Palestine is an Arab state. It is a state of the Arabs. Arabic is the sole official language, and Islam is the official religion and shall guide all decisions. So if those kind of provisions are racist or discriminatory, it would seem that the people who are calling for a Palestinian state are real racists. The nation-state law provides for concern about diasporic communities, about the Jewish diaspora. And many countries with large diasporic populations, like Armenia and Ireland, have these provisions. Every part of these provisions can be found in the constitutions of other Western democracies. And again, on an even more broad level, some Western democracies, mostly those with new constitutions, post-Soviet countries, have provisions about national collective self-determination. But many others enshrine constitutionally the majority's collective understanding of itself through other provisions that are even stricter, like an official religion, or the state being represented by a monarchical family, which is always from the ethnic majority people. So, for example, an Arab can become president of the state of Israel. There's no constitutional barrier to that. But an Arab can never become head of state of Holland because he is not from the House of Orange, which under the Dutch constitution, all heads of state of Holland must be drawn from.
Wow. Wow, very interesting. I didn't know that. I want to talk with you about the double standards. Why Israel is under this kind of attack always, this kind of obsession, anti-Semitism. What is going on here? Why Israel is under attack?
I think there's lots of reasons. So, and they change over time. What's amazing is whatever the historical setting is, there's always a new reason. So, for example, during the Cold War, the majority of the countries in the United Nations were either communist or parts of the Third World non-aligned movement that were in many ways sympathetic to Soviet anti-Western initiatives, and attacking Israel was part of that, was the easiest and most attractive part, and that's why you had automatic majorities in the United Nations for every anti-Israel thing, and why the United Nations became a big center, a locus for anti-Israel resolutions, including Zionism as racism in 1975. That was part of the Cold War. And, of course, many countries had reasons to take the Arab side because the Arab states were more numerous. They had oil. Israel didn't. But then there's sort of maybe deeper phenomenon in play. Now, one of the most vocal, now the Arab world is not particularly critical of Israel, and the most vocal criticism of Israel now comes from Brussels and Geneva, European criticism. And this is very interesting, because what you see here, I think, is you have a war of ideas and a war of ideologies. The Europeans, for the past 70 some years, their ideology has been to give up on nation states, to give up on borders and countries and all of their distinctive identities that they had established so painstakingly and at so much cost over so many hundreds of years, in favor of a more cosmopolitan identity. And they did this with some sacrifice, right? Sacrificing national autonomy, national sovereignty. And along come the Jews. And the Jews now are saying, no, we're doing something different. We are having an ethnic nation state. That is a rebuke to the European ideology. And, just like Athens and Sparta, it's hard to have two similar people, but with different ideologies, without having conflict. Now, of course, Europeans are not critical of Arab nationalism or third world nationalism, the nationalism of less developed countries. But I think that's easier for them to say, well, those people are on a lesser level of civilization. When they grow up, they'll become international cosmopolitans like us Europeans. But because Israel is a technologically advanced nation, because Israel is clearly of the West, its nationalism is scary. Its religiosity is scary. I think very similar reasons why the Europeans are unhappy with Modi. If Modi was taking India into the Dark Ages, it would be okay. But in fact, if he is pro-technology, pro-industrialization, it's alarming to them. So you have a war of ideologies, and the other ideology must be suppressed. And of course, a final reason, I don't think it's the most important, but it's maybe the one that we can do the most about. People want to be seen as promoting justice. Right? They get together at the UN and they want to do good for the world. And law professors want to write about international law in a way that's meaningful. And human rights people want to write about promote human rights in a way that's meaningful. So if you go to Western Sahara to protest the Moroccan occupation of Western Sahara and the fact that the majority of the population there is now Moroccan settlers, you shouldn't have plans necessarily to come back anytime soon. Right? You come to Israel and you will be feted by civil society. You'll give a talk at the Hebrew University, and you'll get a medal from some NGOs. So you can both feel like you're doing good and not have such a hard time and be well received. Because Israel invites this. So needless to say, the majority of not terribly brave human rights people are going to gravitate not to the greatest problems, but the problems where they can talk the loudest with the least objection. And, there's probably a inverse relationship between the ease of taking human rights positions and the bravery of doing so. So, that's why they're not going to Iran to protest the hanging of gays. They might this might bother them a lot, and they might really know it's bad, but they don't want to be hung up there next. So Israel is the perfect soft spot of enough stuff to criticize, they feel, but not particularly significant consequences for doing so, because we welcome our critics, we love our critics, we accept our critics, and they can do justice and have dinner at a nice restaurant in Tel Aviv in the same day. So that's another reason.
So here, by the way, I agree with you very much. I agree with you completely about what you said. We are saying in Tirtzu a lot that one of the biggest enemies of Israel is also the ignorance in the battle of ideas that you're talking about, is that people sometimes they don't know what to answer. I see that a lot of time you change the narrative. Even in the interviews, you really know how to flip it around and then put things really in proportions, because at the end of the day, Israel provides more human rights and civil rights than any other country in the Middle East and Africa. We are an amazing country. So if someone listen to this interview and say, okay, so of course people need to read more and make their knowledge deeper and wilder, but from the other side, what are the 1, 2, 3, 5 points that you the bullets? What are the things that people need to know how to answer?
There's a fundamental rule of international law about the borders of countries, new countries, and everybody needs to know this rule because it's simple and it works around the world. So you don't have to think about what's special about Israel. A new country, as Israel was in 1948, assumes the borders of the last top-level administrative unit in its territory. So, for example, when the Soviet Union collapses, the Soviet Union, its top-level administrative units were 16 Soviet socialist republics. So what are now the borders of the new independent countries of Russia, Ukraine? They're the borders of the Soviet socialist republics of Russia and Ukraine, even though those borders were not made through self-determination, through any kind of referendum. Those are the borders today. So what this means is Israel's borders are the borders of mandatory Palestine, which of course includes Judea and Samaria. Just like Lebanon's borders are the borders of the Lebanon part of the French mandate. Syria's borders are the borders of the mandate for Syria. That is why the Kurds don't have a state in Syria. That is why the Druze don't have a state in Syria. That's why the Kurds don't have a state in Iraq, because it was not part of the borders of Mesopotamia as a mandate. So Israel gets those borders. Everything that happened afterwards was an occupation by Arab countries. So it's very important to understand that the League of Nations mandate, whose 100th anniversary we're celebrating now, is the source of not the legitimacy of the State of Israel, but the source of the basic demarcation of its boundaries, not the United Nations in 1947. But more generally, I would say that if people hear strong claims about Israel and international law, the first thing they should say is, can you show me another situation with similar circumstances where international law has been applied the same way? Jews are moving to Jerusalem. You say it's a war crime? Can you show me another example? When Americans moved to occupied West Berlin after World War II, which was occupied until 1989, was it a war crime? Did anyone say it was a war crime? Give me an example of this rule that you say is a rule in any other case not involving Israel.
Well, Eugene, God bless you. Thank you so much. I hope after the Corona time we can do it together. Toda rabba. Thank you.
Yes, face to face. Absolutely.